Hello, everyone. My name is always Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by latest tomorrow morning. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. If you're joining us live, drop a 1 in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves. And if you're watching the recording, drop a 2 in the comments. My guest for this week is Sylvester Albanie, investment principal at Hlayisani Capital and former group executive for mergers and acquisitions. He's also an MBA and a master's in finance. Sylvester, thanks so much for joining me today.
Good afternoon, always. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to your audience as well.
Let's jump straight into the meat. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Sylvester Albanie? Give us that backstory.
Yeah, let me maybe first tell you about outside of work, and then we'll go into work and stick with work. Well, if you want to. So I'm from Wellington, out in the Boland. I was born and bred there and went to the local high school there, Bergrivier Hoërskool it's called. For context, it's a normal public school. I'd ask someone to check for me. If you had to go there today, it's 1,200 rand a year if you can afford it, and if you can't, then you don't pay. So it's 100 rand a month school. My mother was a teacher. She's retired now. The hardest working person, toughest and also kindest person that you could ever meet. My father he worked in I never knew my father. He worked in a factory that made like wood stuff, as far as I understand. He went to go buy the soap, and we never saw him again. What else? We grew up. We stayed with my grandmother and my grandfather, humble people as well. At school, I did sport. I played rugby. I tried to play chess. I wasn't any good at it. And yeah, I sort of get my nose in the books and with friends and stayed out of trouble in school. I really just wanted to get done with school. I think that's for growing up years. That was it. For fun, I have a sister. She's like 6-7 years older than me. She's probably 6-7 times smarter than I am as well. I actually the primary school I went to, I asked my mother when I was in grade 5, standard 3, to be taken out of the school because they kept comparing me to my sister who was there before me, and I was just tired of it. I'm married. My wife is a teacher as well. I've got a son. He is 4 years old and 4 months, and my sister reckons he's as smart as she and me put together. For fun, I take my dog for a walk. I like to read. I like to listen to hip hop music, and I watch French movies and French series a lot, and I read the subtitles. We live in a world where you watch movies and then you pick up your phone and all of a sudden you are distracted. You lose half the movie. So I find that being forced to read subtitles actually keep me interested. Professionally, I studied at UWC, my undergrad. So my foundation is in computer science. I actually, I had a bursary for computer science. It was more sort of by default that I studied computer science. I went to go work. My first job was at Deloitte in their risk advisory business. It was hell of interesting. I had a mentor there, an assigned mentor, Munir Damon. He's actually head of internal audit for Old Mutual. Just seeing that we on careers, like the one thing that he taught me that sticks with me till today is when you draw your career path, like draw alternatives. Things don't always work out as you expect them to do. So he was my formal mentor. Ibrahim Parker there was my informal mentor. He was the first guy he was a senior manager at Deloitte, and he was the first person to show me the middle finger in an office environment, and it just made me feel so comfortable to say that, well, it's actually normal. You can be normal and still make it to the top. So after Deloitte, I went and I worked at ABSA. So that was during the recession. I went to go work for Absa, which contracted them. I worked there for a guy called Sylvester Governor. He was my manager in their audit division. So I worked between the retail bank and the investment bank. Surain also had his own business, so I ended up doing a lot of his work as well. So I accelerated my learning within the bank very quickly. But I also knew that sort of that audit risk advisory business was not what I want to be in. That I want to be in finance and sort of deal making. And it was by that time, like growing up, I always had like random side businesses kind of thing going. I started lending money to people when I was in primary school, for instance, like my pocket money and like odd jobs money, cleaning the yard money. So I was never going to be in a risk role for the rest of my life. And then so then I went to do my MBA while I was at Absa, with the idea of pivoting my career out of that field. And with as I was finishing up my time at Absa, I interviewed with business partners. A guy, Chris Kuhn, interviewed me there. And it's funny, I was still sitting in the car preparing some notes before the interview, and Chris asked me a question. Tell me something about the IRR. And it's like the only technical question. And by chance, it was the one thing that I read before I walked into the interview. So I could tell him this, it makes the assumption that you invest in the money at the same rate that, over time. So worked at business partners for a few years. My second interview there was with Nazim Martin, who's currently the chairman there. Actually, that was also a revelation. I remember sitting in the interview in Nazim. So Nazim is from Steenberg in Cape Town, and if you know that, is also like a rough part of Cape Town. And Nazim was telling me like he's the youngest of 8. His mother sewed for a living. His dad didn't work. And he only ever had bursaries to go and study everywhere he studied. And he sits there and he tells me this story. He says, and Sylvester, now if you look at me, right, and you see the suit and all of this, like, if you scratch, and you scratch underneath the suit, you'll see that underneath it, there's just another Hlayisani Capital. And again, it immediately made me like actually realize, well, just keep at it. There's ways to get there. Worked at business partners for a while with the guy who's currently the CIO there, Jeremy Lang, and Zelda. She's since retired. Probably the best working years of my life. We had a great team. Manela, Roxanne, Alex Funk. Alex is now the chief investment officer for Schroders in the UK. So we had a great team. We had a great time working there. And then tried to move back to Cape Town. So I met my wife during that time. And of course, you sort of move with the love. And moved back to Cape Town, worked at Absa. Moved down with business partners, but then went to go work at Absa. Excuse me for a second. Worked with Jason Hamilton at Absa. Super guy, great boss. Chris Buchanan is now head of credit, I think, for Absa. The guy Ndumiso Zulu is now in private equity at Old Mutual. It was a great team as well. We did great things. And then after like a year and a half there, look, I was doing deals then consistently for a while, and I felt like I needed to stretch myself even further. So I made a decision. I need to go and work either for a startup or for a business that I can see is obviously in trouble, a turnaround situation of some sort. So I went to go work for Novus Holdings, the listed printed business, and at that time I called them the listed startup. And they I got the job there. I never thought I'd get the job because in the interview, I went there and said we should call this, that, and the other business. And I actually got the job. Was a very good ride as well. 4 years of my life in that hard environment. It was very hard. Met some of the most intelligent people. Like the smartest guy I know works there, Steve Jones. He's an industrial engineer, current CEO there as well. Neil Birch, very clever guy. And after that, after 4 years there, I thought I'm going to just relax for a while. And But then with Hlayisani, there was an internship position, so I thought, let me go and experience VC at the coal face of it. And so I joined them on an internship sort of thing. Uh, but I was always like at that stage more than an intern, of course. And I've since then worked for Hlayisani as an investment principal. That was 10 minutes. That's a lot of time.
No, it's amazing. It gives us a very good understanding of where you are. I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but I mean, and you said like risk is not where you wanted to be. But then why did you start with an internal audit before you made the switch?
So I'm from Wellington, right? You must go check the unemployment numbers in Wellington. I'm from like Hospital Street in Wellington. It's the drug house on the one side, the drug house on the other side. People don't work. It's people sitting in the sun. They say they go all around the house with the sun the whole day. So now, yeah, I am just finished my degree. I remember the day I got the call. I'm walking out. I wrote to the guy he was CEO of Deloitte at the time, national, and I randomly wrote him a mail over the website. His name is Miles Crisp. I don't know what he's doing now. And then so he gave me a call, and then Deloitte in Cape Town had to interview me, of course, because the boss said just talk to this guy. And then Annelie Oosthuizen interviewed me. She's now head of internal audit for Naspers in process overseas. And then so yeah, so I'm walking. I remember that I was walking from campus, from the station, and I get the call, and Deloitte says, yes, you got the job. I didn't even consider like holding out and maybe listening, going to Accenture or whatever, because here's a job. Like for me, it was just grabbing the first thing that I got. Maybe in hindsight, I should have known my worth a bit more and just held out a bit more. But yeah, it was the first job that I got offered, and it was the job that I took.
I mean, this is the lessons you learn. But I really, just jumping back, I really like your story. We had Jason Hamilton on last year, and I'm pretty sure, I keep calling him Mitch Buchanan, but he was in articles with me. That's why, like a couple of years ago. So I remember you very, very well.
Yeah.
Your LinkedIn headline is very catchy. It says capitalist socialist. What does it even mean? It seems like a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah. No, I think there's a false dichotomy that gets spread in the world that you have to be either socialist or you have to do good this impact investing thing and versus capitalism. Sorry, I almost mispronounced that word totally now because I was waiting for my Wellington English or Cape Flats English to come through here. With socialism and capitalism, I always make the example of like Wayne Rooney, for instance. Wayne Rooney, when he was 16, he was earning a ton of money already, and millions of people around the world were watching him, and he was earning that ton of money, not because he was just earning the ton of money. He was bringing joy to millions of people around the world. And so his societal value was the joy that he brought to the people. And that's why he got the money. Same with Bill Gates. Bill Gates didn't get money just because he's evil and there's chips in the vaccines. He actually changed the way that everyone works by giving computers to people and allowing people to be much more efficient. So his societal value was actually how you work today. So for me, that's why whenever I look at a business, like if it's not clear, like your societal value, then you can't make a capital return on a business in a business where there's no societal impact. And that's where that comes from, the combination of the two.
For the audience, if anybody's got any questions for Sylvester, please add them to the comment section now. We'll answer all the questions towards the end. Sylvester, I see you did an MBA and a master's in finance. Why both?
Yeah, and later in life, in the year like 2020, I think, yeah, it was, I started on a mentorship program, and if I had done that mentorship program earlier in my life, I probably wouldn't have done both. So I did my MBA because I wanted to do the career pivot, and the masters I really just did because I wanted to do a masters. And but so I was, for 2 years I spent with Yolanda Kuba, who's at MTN in a mentorship program, and that changed my life entirely. And Yolanda made the comment that says, Like sometimes we just study for these acronyms for no reason really, and we must look. What the way she phrases it, you must look for challenges that fight back. And a degree doesn't really fight back. You go, if you put in the time and you do the work, you're gonna tend, if you're reasonable, you're gonna pass. So that happened in that stint, in that um, period. And then also I read a comment by Charlie Munger. So Charlie Munger he was an engineer and did law, um, and his way of looking at it as well is sort of, when you go up and you study more and more and more, and you get PhD and postgrad and blah blah. He says you learn more and more about less and less. And so the reason I did both, I think I just wanted the title. In hindsight, would I do it again? Probably not. At the time, I was having an internal conflict actually, and I said to my wife, like, so they mark your thing, and then they give you a mark, and then they say, so my mark was something like, you pass with minor corrections. And I actually wanted to write back to say to them, okay, just give me 50%, and then you keep the minor corrections, and then you have a deal as well. But yeah.
Sounds fair.
Yeah.
And I mean, you said you wouldn't do both in hindsight. So in hindsight, which one would you do if you would
I think I would do
choose?
the MBA. I think the MBA hands down. Yeah, the MBA is a brilliant qualification. Maybe I must say, especially at Wits. Yeah, the lecturers that we had like Tabu Masala, who's a strategy guy, and yes, so the guy is absolutely brilliant. He's got this line that he says, for every buyer, for every seller, there's a people willing to buy. There was a guy, uh, um, Dave Tyson, I think is his name. He used to be head of M&A for Ernest and Young, and he sort of wrote the textbook on it as well. So I think and the broad scope of what you get taught in an MBA. In the first week of my MBA, they taught us, we got labor relations, and the guy taught us that when you work for employers, they sometimes say that if you work on a Monday, you must bring a sick letter, or if you're sick off on a Monday, you must bring a sick letter, or on a Friday you must bring. And he told us, no, go read the law. That's rubbish. You don't have to. And the reason is because sometimes you're going to need this Monday or Friday to finish your assignments. So I need to teach you this first. No, I think yeah. So I found the MBA with all its
Not advice, not financial advice.
with all the tips and tricks and the broad nature of what you learn in an MBA. I think that's useful. But then I must say also, like, the point about studying, I think I wish I learned earlier in life the value of reading good books. Like, I used to read, right? But there are fundamental books that I think one should read. Like if you haven't read, if you're in business, you need to have read, for instance, in my mind at least, like Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. The guy wrote the book on economics. I think you should read that. Intelligent Investor, Security Analysis. If you invest in investments, like those fundamental books, you must read. If you're working in manufacturing or you reviewing businesses in manufacturing, there's a book called The Goal. You must have read that book if you're going to look at businesses in that space. So yeah, I think yes, education and MBA, all of that. But while you wait or until you get there, go and read the fundamental books of the various disciplines.
I think that's a very good one. I mean, to get to read some of those books.
Mm.
We've got a lot of young professionals out there. Some of them may be studying general finance or BCom or accounting or even general business, and they want to get into mergers and acquisitions, or they want to get into the investment industry, but it seems to be a struggle. What advice do you have for them for tips to get into the industry?
Yeah. If you think it's a struggle now, then I don't know, because the time when I got into business partners back in 2012, I think it was, at that time I wrote to every single private equity firm in South Africa. Every single one. SAFCA publishes this list of private equity houses. I went through that list, wrote to everyone, and I think I might have gotten responses from 3 of them. it's not a if you go and tally up the number of professionals working in venture capital, private equity, this M&A space, it's not a lot. So I think it is something that's difficult to get into. Um, how would I get into it? I think your network is probably going to get you at least 50% there. I must say I was lucky that I got into business partners with the interview, and then could do deals in different spaces in my career after that. Um, but I think, yeah, focus on your network. Uh, if I think of all the jobs that I've had, probably 90%, 80% of them became because of people that I know and that I got to know over time.
Network is your net worth, as people say.
Network, yeah, yeah.
What This is a question I like to ask all my guests. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Yeah. In my no, I'll tell you, in my private life, I will say I have children younger, because I only had my child when I was like 35 or something, and to look for cars under a couch at this age, it's difficult. For my professional self, I would say start reading the fundamental books earlier, and look after and build a network. I think building a network was sort of fine, and um, I'm I was one of those people at varsity who used to sit in the cafeteria and play cards as well, and I never thought that that would come back and actually be useful as well. So because M&A and deal making, it's sort of you're talking nonsense the whole day and you're doing maths at the same time. And that was life in the cafeteria at UWC, most of it. But I think, yeah, so you need to be a rounded person in that regard. Um, so the advice of my younger self: read the fundamental books, and look after your network. And for the rest, like, have a life, because you're gonna meet these people by having a life as well.
I think that's great advice. There aren't any questions coming through. Most of the people are just enjoying the conversation. So we got a comment from
Mm.
Jason. He hasn't spoken to you in a while, and we've got a few comments. In terms of
Mm.
any last few words from your side, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know.
Um, I think, yeah, not look. Maybe it's to advertise. Maybe look. We at Hlayisani, where I'm currently an investment principal. We invest in sort of high growth technology enabled businesses. So if you know of any good ones, let us know. Um, Someone's got load shedding there. Hey? I think this load shedding is rubbish as well. They need to fix it. And then, yeah, and I think just for the future, in a personal note, I do investments, and I'd be interested to hear what opportunities you might have to invest in anything that really makes sense, whether it's VC or whether it's SMEs or mid-market kind of transactions. I sort of uh, play in all the spaces in various guises. Yeah.
We've got one question that slipped through, so I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to run it by you very quickly. We got a question from Tapero who says, any books you can recommend? I know you recommended Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Can you run through some of them again if you don't mind? Please?
Yeah. Oh, I think if you for deal making purposes, I would say negotiation books are important. So the best one that I've read there is a book called Never Split the Difference. I can't remember who the author's name, but he's the guy who used to negotiate for people's lives for the FBI or the CIA. So you can imagine the pressure of that job. He talks about negotiation, and then in the same vein on negotiations, I would read John Maynard Keynes's book called the Economic Consequences of Peace. So those are two books that I would read. I would read Steve Jobs' book, the Walter Isaacson autobiography of Steve Jobs. There's a point where Steve Jobs talks about how we confuse ourselves and we think that we're going to live forever. And because we think we're going to live forever, we sort of push all our goals and ambitions down the line. And you got no guarantee that down the line is going to come. So you want to do what you want to do now. So I said security analysis, the intelligent investor. yeah, good. Just get through those ones, and you can write to me, and I'll give you some other books that I think are important to read.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to end. A reminder to everyone that the show has been live on YouTube and will be available on podcast by tomorrow morning. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Sylvester, thank you so much for your time.
Always, thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat.